Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with this week's 6 shocking stories.
So I don't even want to start off with what this one's called because I don't want to give it away because it will just ruin the outrageous nature of this case. So this 48-year-old guy was riding his motorcycle, crashed into a truck. Investigators and the driver of the truck found that the accident was odd because the guy on the motorcycle clearly had enough opportunities to turn away. He hit the truck dead on. They didn't know what happened. They're like, the truck driver just said it came out of nowhere. He wasn't expecting it because of all these other factors. So with this info, they decided they needed to look further into the case and try to decide if it was purely an accident or a suicide attempt because it just seemed so bizarre. So in interviews, they had determined that this guy had body dysmorphia stemming back into his 30s. He suffered from what's called small penis syndrome. Do you want to explain what that is? Because it kind of sounds fake.
I know. I couldn't even believe this was a real thing, but it's also referred to as penile dysmorphic syndrome or disorder. And it's a subcategory. I think that now with all the plastic surgery and stuff we hear about on the news, we hear about body dysmorphic syndrome a lot. And this is kind of a subcategory of it where men feel like their penis size is too small, even though their penis size is completely normal. They just have this distorted view of what it really looks like.
Yeah, so why, I guess you're asking, like, why is this relevant, right? So they're trying to figure out what was going on in this guy's head.
Yeah, and they're trying to see, because just based on the testimony of the truck driver, they're trying to see if he was suicidal. So it looked like he was suffering from this syndrome, and it became so bad that his job as a police officer was affected, and he lost his job as a police officer and became estranged from his wife and children. So it was that bad.
All right, so let's get to the autopsy. So first I want to ask you, when you guys get a body that is clothed, is it part of the external exam to take the clothes off, or does like an assistant do it and then you guys come in and look at the body? How does it work?
Yeah, so in the hospital, obviously we always get someone that's wearing a hospital gown or they're naked in the body bag. That's how we get them there. But at the medical examiner's office, people come in how they're found dead. So we would describe exactly what clothes they're wearing and if there was any kind of damage or anything to the clothes. If somebody gets shot, you would obviously sometimes see a gunshot entry or exit through the clothes. So it's important to document all that kind of stuff. And also just tells you a little bit about the condition the person was living in. Like sometimes if a person is wearing pants that clearly haven't been washed in weeks that are soaked with urine, they might be homeless, or they might have some kind of a mental issue that would cause them to be living in that kind of condition. But yeah, at some point we have to take off their clothes to do the autopsy. So that would be something. When I was interning at the medical examiner's office, that's something that we actually did as students. That was our job. Or we would help the investigators or the techs working there do that. And it is kind of difficult to undress a dead body because they don't cooperate with you, obviously, and they're literal dead weight. So but we would describe the clothes and then take them off.
And I assume you can't just, well, depending on the state of the body, I assume you can't just like cut them off. You have to actually try to preserve them.
I don't know. We'll cut them off sometimes. I don't think. I mean, if your family member died and was living in their decomp juice, do you really want that shirt back? You know what I mean? I'm not sure. I don't really know what happened at the medical examiner's office because it was such a long time ago that I was there, what they did with the clothes. But if we ever had, I'm trying to think, I don't think I've ever had a situation in the hospital where a person had personal clothing on, with the exception of a ring or jewelry here and there, which we would definitely make sure goes back to the family. But I don't know what they do with the clothes there. They probably get rid of them because they're soiled in body fluids, like a biohazard bag or something.
All right, so keep what we were talking about earlier in mind with what's going on in his brain. So they start undressing him, I assume, on the table. And when it gets to his pants, they take his pants off and find the most shocking thing of all in this story.
So he has this giant fake penis attached to his body, and you have to see the picture of it because that's what makes it so shocking, because it looks so ridiculous. It looks homemade. It was huge. It was 10 inches long. So, and it doesn't match his skin color. It has this fake pubic hair kind of hot glued onto it. And the most odd part of it is it's attached around his hip by a wire that is similar to the thickness of like a chain link fence. It looks horribly uncomfortable to think about wearing something like that around your waist. And wow, imagine how shocked they were to find that when they undressed his body.
Yeah, and ultimately, with all the information they had about his mental health and everything, they couldn't determine if he made suicidal attempts in the past. So I guess this got ruled an accident, right?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have any... I don't know, because I think that if he was suffering from such a mental disorder like this, and then they found this thing, and then his family, he was estranged from his family, lost his job, I would say he was dealing with documented mental health issues, but he never really made the claim that he had suicidal ideation. So I'm not sure where the threshold for that is. That would probably be based upon the medical examiner who's signing out the autopsy, but this really has nothing to do with his cause of death. He had a broken skull and a brain bleed from the motorcycle accident. So his cause of death was due to that. It's just more talking about the manner of death. Was it accidental?
Well,
or was it suicide?
I'm wondering if the fake penis like got in his way and distracted him, and that's why he drove into the truck.
I'm not sure. The thing is just so outrageous looking.
It is outrageously huge. I can't imagine wearing that in your pants, and because it's not like a body part on you, it's a foreign object attached to your body, how it might, I don't know, you're just not used to it being there. So I just don't know. I feel like it could have been very distracting.
So at the autopsy, so this is not a typical thing we do at autopsy. They measured his penis, and it was 4 inches flaccid, which is completely within the normal average of a penis. So it's not like he really had some freakishly small penis, and this is why he was obsessive about the size of it. Being flaccid at 4 inches is pretty average. So I'm not sure that really had to be done for this case. Like it's kind of weird to think about measuring someone's penis, but it was done.
Yeah. All right. Well, that one's called Dildo on the Dead, so I guess you could assume why I didn't want to spoil it at the beginning.
Yeah, and you really need to see the picture. It really is shocking.
All right. Our next one's called Bloody Barbie. So a mother was in another room while her 7-year-old twin daughters were taking a bath, playing with Barbies in the tub. Suddenly, she heard a scream from one of her daughters, so she rushes in the bathroom and finds her daughter squatting over a Barbie doll, and she's bleeding.
Yeah, so the mom takes her daughter out of the bathtub and lays her on the bed, and then sees that she's bleeding out of her vagina. So she quick brings her child to the urgent care center, which then had said, okay, what they were asking the kid, like, what happened? And she said that she was playing in the tub with her sister when she fell and got this injury. So at urgent care, they decided that this should be something handled more by the hospital because she had to have an internal exam to see what was going on, or a pelvic exam, which is not usual to do, especially on a child. So they sent them to the hospital. And what's interesting about this case is that it ends up being very innocent, but from the perspective of the emergency room physicians, when someone comes in with an injury like this, they have to not always take the word of the parent because of course people do really horrible things to children. So they need to interview the child separately and see if they get kind of the same exact story that the mom's giving. And in this case, they interviewed this child and asked her what happened, and she said that her Barbies were in the bathtub. And one of them had their legs pointing to the sky, and she slipped on another one of them and fell, and quote, the leg of the Barbie went inside of her body. So the story was exactly what the mom had said. And when they ended up doing the pelvic exam, they saw that she had a laceration in her vagina very close to her cervix. So I think one of the most shocking parts of this story, or I don't know if it's necessarily shocking, but it's just kind of a crazy picture to see, is that the photo that comes along with this story is a bathtub that's got 5 Barbie dolls laying across it. One has their leg up so you could see which one caused the injury, and they're covered in blood.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really disturbing sight to see children's toys in blood. This is a complete freak accident. It's so bizarre that it happened this way. I always think of kids just like, when the girls were like taking baths and stuff, they'd just be like crazy in there. I'm like, dude, you're gonna fall. Be careful.
Oh, yeah, I know. And my kids used to play with the Barbies, and there was a point. Remember, there was a point that there was like 10 of them in the bathtub.
Oh my God,
and
yeah.
I let them do it, and then after a couple days, I was just like, dude, we can't do this anymore, because the fact that they're sitting there and they're wet and they're drying out is just not good. I can't, because Barbies aren't really meant to be in the bathtub, so water could get into weird places, and then that's when mold and bacteria and stuff could grow, and you don't want your girls, especially, like sitting in a tub full of all of that junk when their privates are exposed to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I remember you
kind of skeeve it out.
You had one of those, like, bar or table tray, whatever it's called, that would go across the bathtub, and it was just filled with their toys. I feel like it would take longer to clean up afterwards than the bath itself. And I don't know, they were just always being crazy. Then they throw them on the floor, so when you walk in, you're about to slip on the toys too, and then you're like, cool, they're gonna watch me crack my skull open right in front of them.
Actually, something I was just thinking about that. Remember, a couple months ago, I was going to get in the bathtub. So I have a regular bathtub.
Yeah.
And I lift my leg over the edge to get into the bathtub, and I slid, like my foot that was in the bathtub slid and did like a split, but my other leg was still on the other side of the bathtub. And I was like, what the fuck is this greasy shit all over the bottom of the bathtub? So I have a huge, I'm talking like at least 6-inch in diameter hematoma on the side of my thigh now from banging against the bathtub. And I know, like, I 100% know what child is responsible for this. So I go out of the shower and I'm like, I go up to Lucia, dude, what did you put in the shower? Did you like pour a bottle of olive oil on the floor or whatever? And she's like, no, it's lotion.
Like, duh.
And I was like, why would you bring lotion in the bathtub, So yeah, that's what happened. And that was really hard to get up,
The best is she said she always did it. And you're like, you certainly have never done this before.
No, exactly. But I just don't, they're always trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, soap isn't good enough. Let me try to use lotion or whatever. And you're just like, dude. So, and she was like, ooh, what do they say now when they make a mistake? Ew, ew.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. So this next one's called Fava Beans and a Nice Chianti. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with that pop culture reference, but it's from Silence of the Lambs, the scariest movie ever. I mean, even though scary movies have come out after that, don't you feel like that still holds up as one of the scariest movies?
I think it's scary because it's semi based on real events or, a combination of different people, but it seems like it could be very real, and that's why it's so scary.
Yeah.
Because there are people that are that crazy that do shit to people, and it just freaks you out thinking about it.
I think it's just so well made that even it's one of those movies that I've seen 100 times, but every time I still have that like anxiety building up to, the confrontation scene towards the end of it. So I don't know. The whole thing just skeeves me out so bad. But police got a call that a 65-year-old homeless man in Miami was being attacked. So it took them 18 minutes to get to the scene. Don't you feel like that's kind of a long time?
No, I don't know if it took 18 minutes. I know that when they arrived, they thought that the guy having what was happening to this guy was going on for 18 minutes, but I'm not sure if he was not, I don't know who called 911 in this situation. So maybe it just was, that was a delay as well.
Okay, so when they got there, they were surprised that this attacker was eating this guy's face.
Yeah, he was apparently high on a psychoactive substance, and he was eating his face, literally eating his face covered in blood, like Hannibal Lecter style. And they were saying that it was being done up to 18 minutes. So I don't know if witnesses at the scene saw it or whatever happened. Because think about this, like the guy's homeless. So you have people that are just walking by around, and then you look across and see someone eating someone's face. It might take you a couple minutes to be like, what the hell is going on here? Oh my God, this is bad. Like, I have to call 911. Like, it just, you don't see that every day, I'm trying to say.
I truly cannot imagine witnessing something like this.
That's why we want you guys to share your stories with us, because there's somebody that witnesses these things, and we just got a good one today, actually, but just right before we started recording, so we'll do that one next week. But we really do want to know if you guys have ever witnessed anything insane like this.
Yeah, so as if this guy's face getting eaten off is not enough, the cops are having the hardest time trying to get the attacker off of him, so they had to resort to shooting him. So they shot him twice, but unfortunately the victim got shot twice as well. The attacker did end up dying, but the other guy survived, so he not only has his face eaten off, but he goes blind and he's shot twice, all within a matter of like a couple of minutes, essentially. Like less than an hour, this all goes down.
So he gets to the hospital, and basically all of his skin and soft tissue and muscle are gone from his forehead into his nose. His scalp is exposed. It's just so shocking, even to the doctors that are there. His what is left of his eyeball. So apparently this person that attacked him ate one of his eyeballs, and there was like kind of a piece of it left. But he was blind. They were not able to salvage his eyeballs, and they were able to stabilize him and keep him alive. And they wanted to give him. They met up with a bunch of surgeons and created a team, so they were able to reconstruct his face. And they thought maybe we could get him prosthetic eyes and a prosthetic nose. And he declined to have any more intervention at that point.
He declined it, but he ended up recovering pretty okay within a month of this happening. And he went on to live in a facility. He was working with an occupational therapist. He learned how to feed himself, get dressed again, and he's even playing guitar, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I'm glad. It seems like such a horrible thing, but maybe it gave him kind of a new lease on life, and he was able to enjoy the rest of his life like that. You know what I mean? I think it's kind of cool. If he was just homeless and stuff, it might have just been, sometimes people have to have this like near death experience to get their stuff together a little bit more,
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our next one is one of the wildest Dear Abby submissions I've ever seen. So a person wrote into Dear Abby, which is an advice column, so you could write in and get advice. So they had a pretty complicated predicament. They said they were close with their neighbors, and their neighbors had 3 adult children. So the parents wanted to have more of a friendly dynamic with the kids, not as harsh parenting. I feel like you and I have a pretty good balance of that. We're best friends, but at the same time, where to step in and be my parent and discipline me over my life. I mean, not that you've had to do that much over the last couple years, but
yeah. Well, you were kind of an easy kid, but it's the same with the kids now. Like I try to be friends with them. I want them to come to me and like want to hang out with me and want to be around me. But at the same time, like you got to keep them in line a little bit,
Yeah. So
and still have to keep your kids in line even when they're 30 years old. There's no time to cut that off, because the only way you get better in life is if people are constantly checking you and putting you in your place, right? Because if you always have somebody that's like, you're the best, I agree with you, you're just going to suck as a person,
No, I mean, and we've been talking about that theme a lot over the last couple of weeks, just how we're like thankful our husbands, are very much okay with telling us when we did something wrong.
when we suck.
Yeah, but you need that in your life because, like you said, if somebody's, just telling you you're the best thing in the world, you're just going to become a monster and just not know how to treat anybody, or you're going to just be totally negligent like these people. So basically, one of their kids, who was 19 years old, she was having a severe drug and alcohol problem. The parents had been called one night because she was at a friend's house and she was absolutely melting down, having a freak out. They had to go pick her up. So on the way back, they call this neighbor and they're like, can you come help us with her? She's freaking out so badly we don't know what to do. So at this point, they're asking the neighbor for help. So keep that in mind as we keep going. So they get back and the daughter keeps throwing a fit. She's freaking out so bad. So the neighbor wants to call 911 and the parents are like, no, we're going to tie her down to the furniture and let her keep freaking out until she falls asleep and sleeps it off. Like, is this something you could sleep off?
How do people live, really? A lot of these stories are just like, what is happening in the world? This is so insane. And I think, like, if she said that she was going to tie up her daughter to a piece of furniture to let her work out whatever episode she was having, I'm sure it's been done in the past.
Exactly. Because you wouldn't just be so forthcoming with that information like it's just a regular occurrence in your household that's what happens.
Well, the kid went and like, I feel like you left out kind of a part that is even, was a little bit even more like above weirdness, is that when this kid got picked up from wherever she was freaking out in the car so bad that she kicked the window out and was peeing in the car.
She was peeing in the car and she was saying she wanted to die.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think clearly the neighbor can, from being an outsider, looks and says, okay, when people are acting like this, it's like a huge cry for help, or she's having some kind of psychotic episode, or on top of that, she just has a mental illness which is exacerbated by whatever substance abuse issue she's having. But that kid clearly needed to get some help, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So she keeps freaking out so badly. So the neighbor is finally like, I gotta call 911 because she's threatening her life, saying she doesn't want to live anymore, and nothing can calm her down, which that's not a normal situation. So the guy tells the parents he's going to call 911 and they flip out. So he does it anyway because it's just not de-escalating at all. They come, she gets 5150'd, which puts her in a involuntary 72-hour hold in a psychiatric facility. And the parents are now mad at the neighbor.
That's typical of parents that act that way. That reminds me of the parents that are always like, it's not my kid's not the problem,
Oh my God.
And that's how, when you see a parent that's like that, their child always ends up growing up to be a complete nightmare because of that.
Yeah.
You could see it,
I mean, we know a situation right now where we're watching that go down. So I don't know, like the point of this is the person is writing into Dear Abby asking advice on how to handle this, to which the writer, is the person's name actually Abby? I don't think so.
I think when it started back, because it's been around a really long time, I don't think she's like the orig. I'm thinking.
I think it's like a team of people at this point. It's been going on for decades.
Yeah, I don't know, but the whole thing is just kind of weird because she just writes back and she's just like, yeah, no, your neighbor sucks. You were right, kind of thing. I think it's funny that somebody would even, when you're around craziness, that you even have to question that this was wrong, that of them to not want to send their kid to get help is just, it's kind of funny that somebody would take their time out to like write this letter and not really know that they were 100% right. Imagine if the neighbor didn't, I mean, first of all, like, how do you even go home and go to bed at night after that, right? But imagine if the neighbor didn't intervene and the kid went home and either ended up killing herself or ended up getting really hurt because the parents were trying to restrain her and stuff. How would you live with yourself knowing that you didn't do what your gut feeling told you that was the right thing to do,
Listen, my advice would be give it 6 months, and if they don't sell their house, you got to sell your house because you just can't keep living next to these people.
Yeah, I don't even know why you would be friends with those people. Like, what good? They're mad at you. They won't talk to you anymore. Well, you win, like, right?
Well, but do you want to keep witnessing this going down? I mean, clearly this person is in crisis or they're having a drug issue, so like they need help, and their parents are just like, oh, they'll figure it out. That people need help sometimes. It's why there's a whole television show called Intervention. Like, they need people to step in and help them. I don't know.
I mean, it's sad, and one of the the biggest fears as a parent is when, I mean, I have an older kid that got out of all that stuff, but it's like you have 2 little ones, and then when you hear stories about this, about kids that are teenagers and they're on drugs and they're just acting like this, it's so scary to think that happens as a parent, but you also can't be in denial. I mean, that's what it is. It's denial that there's something wrong. You should never have to go pick up a 19-year-old child and feel like you need to tie them to furniture to work whatever out temper tantrum they're having out,
Well, that is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't blame. Honestly, if I were the neighbor, I would feel good that I could sleep at night knowing I did the right thing in that situation.
If this story is how it all is, and I don't know what the neighbor had told the cops, I feel like the cops should have, there should be an investigation on the parents, because if they said they wanted to tie the child down, I mean, she's not a child anymore. She's 19 years old, right?
Yeah, so it couldn't be child abuse, but
it's still people abuse. Like, you need to,
yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not allowed to tie down another human no matter what age they are. So they really should investigate and see like what the hell is going on in that household. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like
they shouldn't just like ignore that.
And like, are the other kids they have okay, or is this one just a problem? And I don't know. I'm curious what the other siblings think about all of this, and it just seems like an incredibly problematic dynamic from parent to child.
Could you imagine just? I mean, it's better that it's not you, I guess, but living next door to someone that's just like living this absolute craziness. It's just
no, because all my neighbors
are getting dragged into that shit. Jesus.
Well, all my neighbors are old, so nothing really goes down in my neighborhood. But when I lived in South Philly, things like this were going on all the time. There was one day I was home and all these people tried to break into my next door neighbor's house because she called the cops on them for selling drugs. It was like crazy.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, I gotta get out of here, dude. Like, I love watching the drama from afar, but I don't want to be like smack in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Especially when I have to like go to work and there's a confrontation outside.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Okay, this next one's called Buried Alive. A 25-year-old male was digging a ditch that was over 16 foot deep. So when you're digging, you're not really supposed to dig deeper than your shoulders because of the obvious risks if it were to cave in.
Yeah, so in this case, he was doing some kind of construction stuff and digging a ditch or a trench. But we heard a story. We reported on Mother Knows Death.
Yeah, about the child in the sand on the beach.
Yeah, and it's a similar thing. Like, you can bury a hole if you're going to go into it up to your knees and you'll be fine. But think about if it's up to your shoulders and it compresses your chest, you're not going to even be able to get your arms out and be able to get out of it. So you just have to be really careful if you're ever digging in that kind of situation. But it's funny, like Gabe and I will be driving around all the time and you just see people doing construction on houses, especially kind of around, I don't know exactly what they're doing when they're digging around the house, like maybe for some kind of drain or something, or I don't know. But he'll always just be like, those people are such idiots. They should not be standing in a hole that deep that I only could see their head sticking out of it. You know what I mean? So in this case, when they did the autopsy on this guy, it's such a striking autopsy to see because there's just sand like packed inside the guy's mouth, inside the guy's trachea, inside the guy's esophagus. So his cause of death was caused by asphyxia, which he just had the inability to breathe. But at the same time, this also proves that he was actively trying to breathe while he was stuck under the sand, which is so scary.
So, like, how, if this were to cave in, like, do you have any chance of surviving it, or does it just happen so quickly that it fills up in your mouth?
Well, you're going to panic, right? And your heart rate's going to increase and everything like that. And if you're going to try to grasp for air, because that's the problem, it's like twofold. It's number one, that the weight of the sand is compressing on your chest. So you're having a hard time expanding to breathe anyway. And then the sand is filling up inside of your mouth if you don't keep your mouth shut. I mean, I guess this even happened with that child, though. Like, I think it happened right in front of the parents and they just weren't able to get her out in time just because it goes so fast. I mean, think about how long you could hold your breath when you go underwater or something. It's not very long.
Yeah.
You know? And just that fight or flight response of panicking and stuff, what are you just going to sit there and just try to be calm? No, you're going to try to move as much as you can. And like, you know, and the movement causes you to need to take increased breaths and everything. It's just, you just have to try to prevent it. Like, this is a completely preventable accident. It's the same exact thing with the digging of the holes in the beach and stuff like that. It's just preventable, you know?
Yeah, and I think just with a lot of these cases, everybody just has the mindset of it won't happen to me, and it's just better to be safe, you know?
Yeah.
All right, our last one is called teamwork. So a 69-year-old male was found dead in his house, which I feel like that's young to be found just dead.
My cutoff, I guess, my cutoff is 70. So I would say, like, yeah, it is young, but 70's the age where I feel like you see it more. You know what I mean? Like, more people die over the age of 70. That's the more common thing to say, under 70. So it's like 69 is kind of like right there at the magic number for me.
I don't know. I'm sure I've said this before, but my friend Alicia worked at a retirement home when she does speech therapy. So she was working at a retirement home at some point, and every time, like, oh, a 90-year-old died, she's like, that is so young. You wouldn't imagine how long people live until you work in that environment and you're around so many elder people. So I don't know. In my mind, thinking of everything she says, I think 69 is pretty young to be found.
Well, this is how I look at it, right? If you're 69 and you've been living a healthy life, like you have a pretty good weight and you work out once in a while and you eat well and you take care of yourself and you don't smoke and you don't drink, 69 is young to die. But there's a certain point, and probably it's right around my age, like 40, 45, where you start getting old. Like, your shit starts shutting down. You can't eat the way you used to. You can't drink the way you used to. You can't not exercise the way you used to. Like, you have to start maintaining. And if people don't maintain from the age of 40 on, then you're going to see people that are dying in their 60s and 70s. But and then there's like this other big component of genetics too. You know what I mean? So it's just like a combination of both. So so many of the autopsies that I did were in people that were 70 years old, right? But it's always people that they drank alcohol or they smoked cigarettes or they were overweight their whole life or whatever. And it's just kept caught up with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So police search through this guy's house and they realize it's filled with urine, feces, and there's 30 plus cats roaming around the house. So
Yeah, it was like a hoarded situation.
So what did they see at the autopsy? Were they even able to determine how he died?
So when they did the autopsy, they looked at he had a lot of wounds. His whole entire neck, his bottom of his face was essentially gone. His neck was essentially gone, and his chest and abdomen were open and looked like it had wounds around it. But the interesting thing is that the edges of the wounds, normally if you saw someone that had trauma like that to their body, you would think, okay, they were murdered. You see these horrible like open gashes on this person's body. How would you do that? But the edges of the wounds were very like a yellowish color, and they didn't look like they were done while the guy was alive and his heart was still beating. It looked like it happened after he was dead. So they came to the determination that his cats ate him after he died, and which happens more often than you would think, because guess what? Like, if an animal's left alone in a house and the only person that was living there is not feeding them anymore, then they start to eat you because you're a piece of meat at that point, right? And they weren't able to determine how he died because almost all of his lungs and heart were missing. So they couldn't really say like what he died from.
I mean, this is just kind of nuts. Like, do dogs do this too, or is it just mostly seen in
Yes,
cats?
dogs do it worse. Because they're I mean 30 cats is a lot, but it was interesting in this case report how they were saying that you could see like what happens when a pack of like carnivores works together, and it because the guy didn't really seem to be dead for a whole long of a time. He doesn't really look too decomposed, and they just ate him like you would see a lion eating a hyena or something. It was nuts.
So how long do you think it took them to start eating him? Like a couple hours after he died, or until he started decomposing?
Well, it's hard to say because like if this happened, if I lived at this house by myself with my cat, right? My cat she ate this morning. She got a full bowl of food there that will last her a couple days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, I mean, she eats every day. She eats lunch and dinner or every single day, or breakfast and dinner every day. And on top of that, has access to a bowl of food every day. This situation these cats were living in, I mean, think about feeding 30 cats. They might have been like very hungry before he even died. 30 cats is just so much cat food. I mean,
Yeah,
was he adequately feeding them? I don't know. So they could have already been in this like desperation, starvation mode. You know what I mean? At that point.
yeah. I mean, clearly, I feel like you're breaching on, unless you're running an animal facility or shelter or something, like something's going on if you're having 30 animals in your house.
Yeah, like try like having 5 animals plus.
5's kind of
Come
a
on.
lot.
It depends. I mean, it's a lot, but I guess it just depends on what kind of house you live in, like what size. Because if you have like a 10,000 square foot house, having 5 dogs isn't that big of a deal. But when I was growing up, one of the girls that was in my class, I went to a sleepover at her house, and she had this super tiny like Cape Cod house. It was similar to our first house. It was like that small. And she had 3 Great Danes living in that house. They're the size of a fucking horse. Like, it was insane. And I just remember being like, what the fuck? Like, they were just in the whole house, like all over the place. It was just the most insane thing I ever saw.
Yeah, I really don't understand how you would have 3 dogs that large in a house that size.
I don't know if that's even good for them. You know what I mean? Like, I guess if there's a backyard or something, but should they really be living in a space like that? It was almost, I remember the dogs kept like knocking stuff off of the counters in the kitchens and stuff because they just were like, there was nowhere for them to even really turn their bodies. It was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks that, you just love them your whole life, and then the second you die, they eat you. So, is what it is.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, thank you so much. If you have a shocking story, please submit to stories@motherknowsdeath.com. Always remember that that's in the description of every episode, so you guys could easily find it. Give us a little teaser, send us some pics, give us as much details as possible.
All right, guys, we will see you in a couple days for our Pathology in the News episode.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor, and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology, so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.